Hello YouTubers, Alaska Prepper here. Ladies and gentlemen, yesterday I put up a video that talked about how the Russia and Ukraine war, I guess we can call it war, right, is going to affect all of us. And during that video we covered fertilizer. Now, I just don't think that people realize what a huge impact the availability of fertilizer is going to have on all of us, but especially the U.S. The Russian fertilizer export ban is going to hit your wallet hard. And that, ladies and gentlemen, is the first order of effects. The second order of effects can very well likely be scarcity in food, meaning that we don't have enough fertilizer for us to be able to grow the same amount of food that we're used to growing on an annual basis, therefore reducing what we have in stock, or as they call it, I believe, is carryover. Now, ladies and gentlemen, this article is about a week old or so, but it's still very relevant. So I'm going to start off right here where it says, this will affect every part of the American economy, from the food we eat to how we fill up our gas tanks. Understanding why involves fitting many different pieces together, but trying to understand what's happening now will prepare us for what is likely to happen this growing season. As preparedness-minded individuals, we try not to act in the now, but we try to act now for the later or for the future. And that's why I love sharing these insights with you, because it allows us to see what may be coming down the line. Is it probable that this is going to happen? And then you can decide for yourselves on how you want to adjust your preparedness plan from the information that you gather. Where does our fertilizer come from? The United States is a net importer when it comes to fertilizer. We are known as the world's breadbasket because of our productive corn belt, but it wouldn't be nearly so productive without our reliance on fertilizers from other countries. For example, in September of 21, the U.S. exported $360 million worth of fertilizers and imported $659 million worth of fertilizer. Now, to me, that makes absolutely no sense. Maybe there are different grades of fertilizers, ones that we specialize in and that other countries don't. I don't know, but that makes no sense to me. It's like when we were making enough oil, or when we were pumping enough oil from the ground to suffice our needs here in the U.S., we were still exporting and importing. I'm like, why do that? Doesn't that just add more cost to the oil that we are already producing here? But I digress. This means that for 1 month, we've got a negative trade balance of $299 million worth of fertilizer. We need that $299 million worth of fertilizer for our farms to produce the way we can expect them to. And he goes on to say, the last thing I want to do is start blaming Russia for everything. I've gotten to the point where I think that blaming Russia is simply politicians trying to distract us, from other problems. The Russians have their own set of problems. They are dealing with inflation, like us, and they think controlling their exports will help. But does it put us in a bind? An investigation that took place during 2020 and 21, the Department of Commerce and the U.S. International Trade Commission found Russia and Trinidad and Tobago guilty of unfair price practices and imposed duties on them. I am nowhere near fluent enough in trade disputes to have a strong opinion on whether or not that is a good idea. I do know that hitting vendors with additional fees often makes them take their business elsewhere. And plenty of nations besides the U.S. are happy to buy fertilizer, especially now, ladies and gentlemen. The U.S. is a net importer when it comes to fertilizer, but we're not the biggest. As of 2020, both Brazil and India imported more fertilizer than America. Yes, our corn sucks up a lot of fertilizer, but Brazil grows a lot of corn too. And India's cotton crop requires a great deal of fertilizer as well. Fertilizer producing countries like Russia can pick and choose to whom they will sell. And right now, they won't sell to anyone. Commodities dealing has always worked like this, with countries picking and choosing with whom they will trade, and vendors shopping around for the combination of best prices and cooperative governments. For a long time, worldwide communications between various commodities leaders kept prices low. meaning that for a long time there was a lot more choice, all right? And then the prices is low because there's a lot more choice, a lot more to go around, less prices, right? Just simple economics. And this here goes over how a Russian fertilizer export ban is going to affect us Americans on an individual basis. I've been buying feed from the same dealer for years. The price was always stable until this year. Prices for specific commodities such as oats, millet, or flaxseed have always fluctuated a little bit, but in the past, the dealers could alter their mixes a little bit based on what's most available. For example, if the price on peas went up, they could substitute with another legume whose price was down. Up until recently, the fluctuations were small and varied enough that they didn't need to raise prices. That all changed this year. I buy organic feed, so the issue for me was not the fertilizer prices, but the drought in the western U.S. For those of you that don't know, and probably most of you know if you watch this channel on a regular basis, we are now enduring a 1,200-year-old or long western drought, mega drought, meaning that the drought that's going on in the west right now, ladies and gentlemen, and has been going on for like the last 4 or 5 years, is a drought that is equivalent to the magnitude of one that happened 1,200 years ago. That's how bad it is. He continues to say, but I have noticed that conventional prices are approaching organic prices, meaning that regular prices of food are getting up to about the same price as what people are used to paying for organic foods. And the reduced fertilizer ability is a big reason why. Worldwide, we have grown dependent on a type of agriculture that relies on chemical input from all over the world. People like Sir Albert Howard stated warning the world about artificial manures, as he called them almost 100 years ago. You can certainly spend a lot of time researching the pros and cons of organic versus conventional production if you're so inclined. Suffice to say, people have been talking about the perils of cheap food for a long time, and some of the things that we were warned about 100 years ago, soil degradation, requiring ever-increasing amounts of artificial fertilizers, are coming to fruition. The perfect storm, ladies and gentlemen. I've spoken about this in the past, that it is not one thing that is going to take us down as a society, but that many things at once. When all of these things come to an apex at the same time, it is going to be the perfect storm, and we, ladies and gentlemen, we will pay the price. It has always seemed counterintuitive to be so dependent on other countries with whom we may or may not have friendly relationships for our food supply. Doesn't that just make sense, ladies and gentlemen? It's always, I've always wondered, how is it that we can call this country our adversary, but we import so much stuff from them every year? And not only do we import stuff from them, but we have a trade imbalance with them, which actually adds to our debt. But Americans have prioritized cheap and plentiful for a long time now, relative to other concerns. Regardless of our own personal feelings about the situation, it cannot be denied that chemical fertilizers have boosted our output of agricultural products, particularly with corn. Corn production in the United States has tripled since the 60s due to a combination of crop specialization and fertilizer use. American corn is overwhelmingly genetically engineered. The agri-chemical companies claim that GMO corn uses less fertilizers than corn would use otherwise, but it still uses much more than many other crops. More than half of the synthetic nitrogen made today is applied to corn. Why? Because it makes such a big difference in yield. And here he continues to say, I don't eat corn, so does this matter? Well, ladies and gentlemen, he says that you may think to yourself that since you don't eat that much corn on the cob, it shouldn't affect you that much. But corn is in almost everything. And it's one of the things that I said on yesterday's video, is that corn is in almost everything, ladies and gentlemen. It's even in your gas tank, believe it or not. Unless you are growing most of your own food and meat and you are buying corn-free feed, you're eating corn. High fructose corn syrup is in most soft drinks, juices, and baked items. When something says vegetable oil, that often includes corn oil, and vegetable oil is in a lot of things. Corn and soy are also the two main components of animal feed, and that includes organic. If you buy meat and eggs from the store, those animals were eating corn and soy. If you think you're getting away from corn by buying organic meat, think again. All the label organic here means is that the animals were fed organic corn and soy. There is no getting away from corn in the U.S. without a great deal of effort. And corn even goes into our fuel tanks. About 1/3 of American corn crops goes into ethanol. Isn't that something, ladies and gentlemen? 1/3 of our corn crop goes into ethanol, which is usually added to gasoline at a rate of 10%, though in some parts of the Midwest you can get 15% ethanol fuel. Scarcity drives up prices. Anyone who's ever worked in retail knows this. A scarcity of fertilizer will affect not only food, but also gas prices. He continues to say, ladies and gentlemen, we can't blend our own gasoline. And other than maybe trying to drive less, we don't have much control over the prices at the gas pump. But we do control what kind of food we eat. The overwhelming majority of corn is highly processed. Therefore, if you eat less processed food, you will be eating less corn. Now, ladies and gentlemen, let me go ahead and do a little segue off of this just for a minute. Remember when I reviewed the Kentucky Fried Chicken nuggets that were plant-based? And, I pretty much gave it a pretty bad review. Some people may think that those kinds of foods are good for you because they're plant-based, but they are what are called ultra-processed foods, meaning that they pretty much take the plant-based food items that they are using to make those chicken nuggets, let's say in this case, and they ultra-process them, pretty much stripping them of everything that was good in them in order to make the plant-based food. Don't get me wrong, he says, nitrogen fertilizer goes into almost everything. Unless you're used to shelling out for local organic everything, you will see a huge jump in price due to this Russian fertilizer export ban. And local organic is going to increase as well, though it won't be quite as affected by the synthetic nitrogen shortage. But corn is the staple crop that uses the most nitrogen, and so the increased price in corn and meat are what the general public will feel the most. So ladies and gentlemen, here's another factor that will actually make the price of gasoline go up as well. So ladies and gentlemen, listen to this about how this snowball starts rolling down the hill and getting bigger. Fertilizer prices are going up because Russia stops the exporting of fertilizers, and they export a lot of fertilizer. I think they're the second in the world exporter of fertilizer. So since fertilizer prices are going up because there's less of it to go around, now the price of corn is going to go up. Why? Because you need fertilizer to grow corn. Now, since the price of corn is going to go up, everything that corn has anything to do with, to include your food and even your gasoline, will go up as well. Now, let's go ahead and throw some more snow on that snowball and talk about the crisis that we're having with energy, with fuel, with oil going up. So oil is also going up, which affects the production of fertilizer, which affects the production of gasoline, which affects the transportation of that food, which affects the fuel that's needed on a farm in order to run their equipment. You see where we're headed here? This is where we're headed. War brings nothing but sorrow, absolutely nothing but sorrow. In the end, nobody really wins. How do we as preppers cope with a Russian fertilizer export ban? So you can avoid corn by avoiding processed foods. What about meat? I would never recommend a vegan diet, but meat is about to get a lot more expensive. If you have acreage, maybe it's time to think about raising your own livestock. Talk to farmers in your area and start learning. If, like most people, you are in an urban or suburban environment, see if you can go in on some kind of group to buy like a half cow or something like that, right? And he says that he buys corn-free feed for his animals and that the prices increases are going to hit him as well. But since he's been used to buying expensive feed, the sticker shock won't be as severe as it will be for other people who are used to getting really cheap food. Ladies and gentlemen, I'm going to leave a link to this article in a pinned comment, all right, so you can revisit it. I didn't read the whole article because it's pretty lengthy, but I want to show you this chart. This is the chart of 2021 top potash producers in the world. And what I want to point your attention at is not the top producer, which is Canada, which is great. They produce 14 million tons or 14 million metric tons of potash in 2021. So that's great. They're our neighbor to the north. Hopefully we can resolve whatever issues it is that we have with importing and exporting with the truckers and all that kind of stuff. But it's great. And I do believe that they even have more capacity to produce even more. Now take a look at Russia, 9 million, right? But what worries me the most is this, ladies and gentlemen. Ask yourselves a question. How many countries out there do you really think like the United States? How many countries do you really think like us? I think that from outside our borders, countries and their leaders, as well as their people, are laughing at what we are doing with our country, at how we are demolishing our country from within. Look at the U.S., where Canada, 14 million metric tons, Russia, 9 million, Belarus, 8 million, China, 6 million, and so forth. The U.S., not even 500,000 metric tons. Ladies and gentlemen, we depend on the rest of the world for the food that we produce. So although we are kind of like the breadbasket of the world, in a way we are not. It is these nations that are the breadbaskets of the world. The nations that produce that one ingredient that we truly need in order to be able to produce the food that we produce now. We have really gutted our country in the form of manufacturing and making those things that we ourselves need in order to sustain our standard of living. And we are beginning to pay that price, ladies and gentlemen. Let this be a wake-up call to all of you. Get prepared now. This is not a joke. Everything is coming together, and eventually it will come to a climax. And if you're not prepared, you're going to suffer. All right, ladies and gentlemen, if you're not prepared, you're going to suffer. Having said that, thank you very much for joining in. I really hope that you got something out of this. Remember to be good to each other. When good people do good things happen. Remember to reach one, teach one, and repeat. If we all did this, the world would be a better place, and you know that it will be a better place. Many blessings to all of you and your families. I'm Alaska Prepper. I'm out. If you are in the part of your preparedness plan where you are stocking up on long-term food storage, Nutrient Survival is offering this breakfast bundle through the end of February. And it includes their #1 bestseller, the Homestyle Scramble. In addition, it includes the Maple Almond Grain Crunch, Chocolate Grain Crunch, a pack of the citrus orange flavored Immune Boost, a #10 can of the powdered vitamin eggs, and a box of the vitamin coffee, which is the best spray dried coffee I've ever had. This is by far the most nutrient dense food I've ever had, and it tastes great. So feed your freedom with Nutrient Survival.